The most news in the morning. CNN's American Morning. Weekday, 6 a.m. Eastern.
Most of us, fear of flying means we're afraid of the plane not making it on time, but a CNN investigation suggests we should be more concerned about the air we're breathing inside the cabin, and that being toxic.
Wow, scary stuff. Well, Alan Chernoff's been looking into the so-called fume events, and he's here with the second part of his investigation. You guys actually tested the air on board a flight.
Absolutely, for very good reason. You know, we've been talking about how toxic fumes from engine oil can actually seep into the cabin's air supply system because that air comes through the engines. So how do we know that the air on board our flight is actually safe? Well, we collected samples on board a transcontinental flight. I'm not going to mention the airline because this is really an issue that affects all airlines. Even though I was well aware of the risk, I have to say our results were surprising.
Could the air on board your next flight be toxic? Ventilation air comes through the engine, so an oil leak can result in engine oil mist containing neurotoxins to seep into the cabin.
So we're going to test the air on board this plane. I'm turning the air monitor on. For 90 minutes, it's going to sample the air. Toxins in the air would leave residue on surfaces of the cabin. So I'm swabbing here to bring samples back to the laboratory so we can determine if indeed there have been any toxins in the air here.
Let's have a look.
Toxicologist Chris Van Netten at the University of British Columbia has studied air quality on board planes for years.
We'll take this out very carefully.
Van Netten places the air filter and alcohol swabs into test tubes. His research associate, Tim Ma, adds solvent to extract whatever chemicals or samples captured. They also analyze some of producer Laura Dolan's hair to see if it collected toxins from her seatback cushion. Tim runs the resulting chemicals through a mass spectrometer, a device that measures molecular weight and chemical composition. The finding? Our swabs of the air cabin surface do contain the neurotoxin tricresyl phosphate, known as TCP, which is in engine oil.
It's the pattern that really nails it down to the actual engine oil, because this is the pattern you find in engine oil, and this is the pattern you find in the swab sample that you took from the aircraft.
Tim Ma has analyzed surface swabs from 40 different flights and says he almost always finds TCP.
And on virtually all of them, you find it?
Pretty much so, yes. The wipes are at significant levels.
Significant, but not large. The biggest amount we found, 44 billionth of a gram. Not enough to have any health consequences. Our air samples do not show any traces of TCP. That means toxic residue has collected on the surface of the cabin from either a prior fume event or from gradual, continual accumulation of toxins.
There is a fair amount of remnant material floating around literally in the ventilation system, which comes out on a regular basis. And that's what you're measuring.
So even if the flight you're on hasn't had a fume event, there are toxic fumes in that ventilation system, right, and it's coming out.
That's exactly the case. And
Van Netten explains his research shows when engines are shut down, some oil can leak overnight. When a plane starts up in the morning, a mist of oil can spread through the cabin.
So you don't want to be the very first person on the plane in the morning when they turn it on.
That's what pilots are. Pilots are the ones that turn on the engine.
Laura's hair shows traces of TCP as well, though only 1/1,000,000th of a gram.
Her hair probably picked it up from the seat.
Yeah.
Right? That would say to us, when you get off that plane, you should take a shower, probably, right?
Well, you should take a shower anyways.
Of course. The two leading aircraft manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus, which both use the same ventilation system, they acknowledge fume events can occur, but they say the system provides good and safe cabin air quality. Now again, Chris Van Netten says the amount of toxins we found on the cabin interior are not going to cause health problems. The people at greatest risk are those who actually work on board the plane, pilots and flight attendants. Van Netten says that crews should be equipped with air monitors so they can measure toxicity levels, especially in the event of a fume event.